Coming up on this episode of Photography Online, we get the big boy out, we preview the Photography Show, Europe's largest consumer trade show, and we see if the Nikon D850 can dethrone the Canon 5Dsr. Welcome to part one of our September 2021 show. Where has the year gone? Once again, we are commercial free, so sit back and allow yourself to get immersed in the show for the next 30 minutes or so. As you've just seen, we have got a digital camera face-off. We'll show you what you can expect from this year's photography show at the NEC in Birmingham, and we're also about to expose some film, so you definitely can't fault us for variety. If that's not enough, then we've also got a gallery of some of the dereliction photos you sent in, so stick around for that. But first, a while back, Marcus borrowed a large format camera to give it a try and see what shooting sheets of film is all about. 6 months on and he's still refusing to give it back, so I asked him to film one of his recent outings with it and explain what on earth all those unusual controls and moving things do.
Well, welcome to a session with a large format camera. I saw this old barn here with this old wheel, rusty old wheel in the foreground with the nettles and the kind of ferns growing through it. And there's something about this that excites me if shot on film, and if I only had digital, would leave me completely cold. I've got zero interest in shooting this with digital. Now, it doesn't mean to say that I got anything against digital. There's lots of other scenes which I look at and I just want to shoot them in digital. But this scene here, and I can't really explain why, but like many other scenes, I look at it and I just think 100% analog. But there you go, something to do with the subject matter. So we've got the camera kind of semi set up. I haven't started doing all the movements yet, but that's what this feature is all about really. It's about lens movements. So here we've got what's going to have to be quite a deep depth of field, because the closest point in the image is probably only ½ a meter from the camera, from the lens, and the furthest point, which is pretty much the roof of the cottage there, obviously we've got the sky behind it, but I don't care if that's sharp or not, that's probably 20-25 meters away. But crucially, the closest parts of the scene are at the bottom of the frame, and the furthest parts of the scene are at the top of the frame. So what that's going to allow us to do is we're going to be able to tilt the lens forward and essentially tilt the plane of focus forward as well. So with a normal lens, as you focus it, the plane of focus is like an invisible wall which is parallel to the sensor, and that wall just moves further and backwards. So there's no way that I could get the foreground pin sharp and the background pin sharp. It's physically impossible. So what you're then relying on is using a very small aperture to try and get both of them acceptably sharp, and you kind of focus somewhere between the two. But if you enlarge that image enough, you'll see that actually the foreground or the background aren't actually sharp. The only thing that's truly sharp is wherever you focused. So you are making sacrifices by doing that, but this camera here will allow me to tilt the lens forward, and even at a wide aperture, most of the scene should be relatively sharp, or actually pin sharp. And then we're going to use a medium to small aperture anyway, just to get all the other areas pin sharp as well. So I'm going to set the aperture on this lens to its widest, which is f5.6. I'm going to set the time to bulb, which means that when I open the shutter with this remote release, lock that, that's now open, the shutter's open. So that's allowing light to come through and hit the ground glass at the back. But because of the sun, there's no way I'm going to be able to see that. So I'm going to have to plunge myself into darkness. Okay, so that's the composition sorted. So now I need to focus. So for this, I need a loop, and I'm going to go in, look at the ground glass at high magnification, and I'm going to tilt the lens forward until both the foreground and the background are both sharp, even at f5.6. Now this can take a while because there's lots of toing and froing with this, because when you get one bit sharp and then you tilt the lens, the bit that you've got sharp becomes unsharp, and so you have to keep focusing. But there's a method to it, but it's quite a long, drawn out process. So just join me when it's done. Okay, so I've managed to get the wheel in the foreground pin sharp, and I've also managed to get the front side of the roof sharp. But because the roof runs away from the camera and is at the same level, I can't therefore get both of those sides sharp. I could, yeah, let's twist the lens that way as well. Bear with me. Voila, everything's pin sharp. So even at f5.6, when I say everything's pin sharp, we've got the odd rock that's not quite sharp, but the control over everywhere is pretty good. So if I stop this down to maybe f16, which is only in the middle of the range of this lens, because this lens will go down to f45. So shooting at f16 is going to be where the lens roughly performs at its best, and that's going to give me everything pin sharp everywhere across the scene. Now that's only possible because of the lens movements, and that's why large format photography is so much different from just picking up a digital camera and focusing, and then what you get is what you get. You see, this is one of the reasons why I love this type of photography, because I've been here for 20 minutes messing around, and this is enjoyment. And I haven't even taken a photo yet. So you get a lot of bang for your buck with this type of photography. Now, I'm all set up, but the shutter's still open. I need to remember to close that, because if I put the film in with the shutter open, that's not going to be good news. So that's now closed. So I can no longer see the image on the ground glass screen. Everything's set up. So the next thing I need to do is work out my exposure. So I'm using Ilford HP5, so I can put that in there. Right, so polarizer. Okay, so that's polarized there. It's fairly even across the whole sky. So in that orientation there, that needs to go on the front. Right, so that's 2 stops that I'm going to have to add to this. So instead of ISO 400, ISO 125 is just under 2 stops. So now this is saying f16 at 125. In fact, let's go to f22, give myself slightly more depth. f22, 1/60th of a second. So I think we're running out of excuses not to take a photo now. The light isn't going to change for the better. Now ideally, I want the sun over there, and it's over there, and it's going further and further around all the time. So the shadow, or my shadow, or the shadow of the camera is creeping around, and at the moment it's not in frame, but it won't be too long before it gets into frame, and by then, obviously, that's it. I would have missed the chance. So I can't hang around too long for this. But anyway, we're going to take this now, stop talking, get on with it. Shutter's cocked, The lock is off. All we need to do now is take the dark slide out, expose, and put the dark slide back in again. Feel the adrenaline. Okay, here we go. That's it. I almost feel like I need to wind something on or do something.
Of course, there would be little point in only showing this photo as a full screen image. So let's take a closer look so that you can hopefully see the advantages of using lens movements. This is obviously a scan, which is just a medium resolution from my flatbed scanner, so hardly pushing the limitations. But even so, the detail in both the foreground and the background is clear to see. By laying down the plane of focus to cover as much of the scene as possible, this has brought both the wheel and the barn into sharp focus. This was done by a small amount of front tilt and a hint of swing, which only worked because both the wheel and the barn are lying at similar angles, facing off to the right. In terms of perspective, it appears that the left-hand chimney and the power pole on the right are both leaning into frame, but they are like this in reality. Looking at this shot now, I wonder if I dropped the lens too much, as I think it could have been better with a tiny bit more space above the closest chimney and maybe a little less space down below the wheel. Let me know what you think in the comments section. I hope you enjoyed this insight into what some of the lens movements do. There are, however, lots of other uses which we will hopefully be able to demonstrate on future shows.
If you found that interesting, then why not consider becoming a photography online supporter? Starting at just the price of a cup of coffee every month, you'll get access to exclusive content among other benefits. Just last week, our supporters got to tag along on a photo shoot which Marcus had on his wish list of shots. So if you want to help us to make better content for you and want to see the occasional extra feature, then just click the join button to learn more. Or if you can't see that, there's a link in the usual place. Now, the photography show at Birmingham's National Exhibition Centre is just a couple of weeks away and is now Europe's largest photography trade and consumer show. It runs over 4 days, and if you've been before, you'll know what to expect, but hang around to find out what the organisers have in store for you this year. If, however, the whole thing is new to you, then here's a flavour of what you'll find if you fancy popping along. Welcome to the Photography Show.
Well, firstly, thanks very much for having me on. Yeah, we are really ridiculously excited to get back to a live events environment. Yeah, we can't wait either. For those who haven't been before, I guess the main thing to say is we have a lot of big brands at the show, so there's lots to see and buy and test out in terms of product, kit, etc. And then we have a whole host of educational features at the show, so loads of stuff to help you learn or get inspired, etc. Yeah, most of that is free around the show. And then there's a couple of also specific programs, masterclasses. If you're looking at turning pro, there's a specific program for that. And our super stage as well, which has a really small charge for access to the sessions, but is amazing. There's a really great lineup for that. So
there's so much going on. I mean, you mentioned the masterclasses, the talks, the speakers. Are there any speakers in particular people should be excited about this year? Obviously, all of them bring something different into the mix, and people have got different interests and stuff like that. But for you, is there anything you're excited about?
Well, I mean, I'm always excited about our super stage. Personally, I'm really looking forward to seeing Charlie Phillips, who did a lot of social documentary photography in the 60s and 70s and was kind of pushed aside and forgotten. And I'm really excited to hear from him. He's a great storyteller and his work was recently kind of rediscovered. So that should be really good to hear from him. But yeah, just generally, it's really hard to pick from the program because there's so many good speakers and so many different topics to take in across the show.
I know, there's so much going on. You've got your talks, you've got your masterclasses. You can try stuff out. I noticed this year that you've got a couple of new spaces for people. I mean, we were down there in 2019, the last time it was on. Everybody comes in with their cameras and their gear, and they like to try stuff out. And I know you've got a couple of new spaces this year for people to do that, including, I'm just double checking what it's called, Action Arena, where they can take stuff, practice with there, and Shutter Street. Why don't you tell us just what these two new spaces are?
So yeah, the Action Arena will have athletes or performers behind a kind of crowd barrier, BMX tricks and things like that. I think there's going to be parkour. I think there might even be a break dancer and things like that. So some really cool stuff to practice taking pictures of and practice the skills on. So yeah, we're looking forward to seeing that in action. Shutter Street is going to be decked out to make it look a bit like a street, with a kind of planted kind of park little area as well, and some shops around the outside. So in those little shops, they're like little areas that you can practice your skills on. So there's one that's like a little spice shop, and one that's a flower shop, and then there's a little portrait studio as well, run by Interfit.
It's gone up a whole other level. I think there's been a couple of years to get the creativity's been building, and like you said, people are super excited. I think just to be back in person. And that was another new thing you got this year. Analog spotlight. Obviously, film analog is. There's been a huge resurgence in the past few years. Lots of young people in particular are getting back into it. Tell us about Analog Spotlight. What is that exactly?
As you say, it's had a huge resurgence recently, and we really felt that we should highlight that. So essentially, it's a collection of micro businesses from the film photography industry. So you can see like the individual, different types of product, because there's loads of really innovative stuff out there that, it's not just old blokes in dark rooms anymore.
Not that there's anything wrong with our old blokes in dark rooms.
No, absolutely not, absolutely. But yeah, there's loads of innovative product out there, and we wanted to give them the opportunity to showcase what they do, but there's also a little talks stage as well, so lots of little talks about getting into different areas of analog and what you can do with it, and so on, and also showcasing again some of those products. So yeah, we're really pleased to have that this year.
I know one of the things that you offer is trade passes for photographers, and a lot of photographers who I think maybe don't realise they're eligible for free entry on that, so they don't necessarily have to I don't suppose be a professional photographer in maybe the way they imagine. Why don't you just tell us what the kind of eligibility criteria is for that, or where people can go and have a wee look and see if maybe that's something that they could be eligible for?
Yes, if photography or videography or both is your main source of income, essentially, then you can apply to register to come into the show for free. The easiest thing to do is to go to our website and go onto the book your tickets link, and then you can choose whether you're looking at trade or professional or enthusiast tickets, and then all the criteria are laid out there for you. So it's a process that you basically go through, answer a questionnaire, and it goes off to a team who review it, and then comes back pretty quickly.
Yeah. So I mean, speaking of going online, is that where you would go if people want more information or they want to book? What's the easiest way to do that? Is it just hop onto the website, click the big obvious button in the corner?
Yeah, that's what I'd say. We try to put as much info on our website as possible, so it's all on there at photographyshow.com. And yeah, if there's anything you don't see on there, there's an email address at the bottom. Please do get in touch and ask us anything, and we'll do our best to answer you as soon as we can.
It sounds absolutely fantastic. I know we're excited to be down there. We're going to be down there with a booth, and I know you guys have been working so hard to get this all ready for everybody next month. So just remind us the dates. Is 18th to the 21st, is that right?
18th to the 21st of September, yeah. So that's Saturday to Tuesday at the NEC.
Fantastic. Well, Ruth, thank you so much for talking to us, and I'm sure we'll see the team floating around down there, and I know there's probably a lot of Photography Online viewers planning on going down as well. So thanks for all your hard work over the past months. I know you've been working so hard, and best of luck with the next few weeks of prep leading up to it. Thanks for talking to us. If that all looks like fun, then we've got a discount code which will get you 20% off the standard ticket price of $14.95 or $11.95 if you're over 60. Whether you're interested in a brand new digital camera, possibly a lens, accessories like filters, bags or tripods, or maybe you're thinking about going old school with a film camera, then there is no better place to get everything you want under one roof. Once you're in, you'll have access to many of the live presentations and all the tutorials and exhibitors you've just heard us talking about, so it is great value and a great day out. We've put the Photography Show's website in the links section down below where you can get all the information and buy tickets. Photography Online will be there between the Sigma stand and the video stage, so come and say hi. And if nothing else, it's worth the entry fee just to see Harry in his kilt. Yeah, I know. Before we move on, I thought I would remind you as well about a photo competition which, along with Colin Pryor and the boss at Sigma UK, I'm helping to judge again this year. Scotland's Photo of the Year now has a prize fund just shy of £6,000, so it's well worth entering if you've got any photos which you feel showcase the beauty and diversity that Scotland has to offer. There are no categories, so landscapes, wildlife, architecture, even cultural images are all eligible. This is a non-profit competition with all funds raised going to local charities, so it's a great cause to support and get involved in. The deadline is the end of October, so depending on when you're watching this, you either have a few weeks or you need to get a move on. There's no time restrictions for when the images had to be taken, so why not have a dig around your archives and see what you can find. As ever, there's a link in the video description, but if you're watching on a smart TV, then just hop online and head to scotland.photography. Alright, well, a couple of months ago we gave you a project to shoot dereliction subjects. As always, our inbox has been bursting at the seams, so we can't possibly show every photo you sent, but here are a selection of some that caught our eye. A big thanks to everyone who submitted images, and even if you didn't see yours in there, we do love to look through them all and really appreciate everybody getting involved, which is, after all, why we make this show, to inspire you to get out and take more photos, and hopefully better photos too. If you think we've helped your photography over the past 18 months, then please let us know in the comments, as we'd love to hear how we're influencing your passion for the still image. Incidentally, we'll be going over some of the dereliction images in more detail in this month's MC2 Live, which will be coming to you from our hotel room at the photography show. The guys will be giving their input on what worked and what they think could have been done to improve the end result. It's always interesting to hear them agree or disagree and debate their thoughts. My job is to keep the peace, plus we'll have loads more to discuss, so hopefully you can join us for that. Places are limited, but there's a link to register in the usual place down here. Now, a few shows ago, we started our quest to find the ultimate full-frame camera for recording detail. Marcus is always banging on about how great his Canon 5Dsr is, despite being 6 years old now. It did, however, beat the much newer Canon R5, but we asked for your suggestions as to what camera could possibly be even better than the SR and take the King of Detail crown. Many of you suggested the Sony a7R III, and one which surprised us was the Pentax K1. Now, we've not managed to get hold of either of those yet, but we are working on it. Another camera though, which many of you put forward as a serious challenger to the throne, was the Nikon D850. Well, it's time.
Welcome to round 2 of King of Detail, and here on the throne at the moment we have the Canon 5Dsr, as signified by this nice no expenses spared crown that it's wearing. Now, if you saw round 1, we pitched this camera against the Canon R5 and we shot exactly the same scene that we're going to shoot today. Reason for choosing this scene is that it's got lots of detail, so it's really useful to zoom right in and see how well these cameras cope at recording fine detail. So this was the winner last time around, and we invited you to make suggestions as to what might knock this off the throne. So this here was probably the most suggested camera, the Nikon D850. Now, looking at these two on paper, they're very similar. This one has 50.6 million pixels, I believe. This is 45.7 million pixels. So the Canon slightly favors this, but there's not a huge difference in it. But crucially, neither of these cameras have a low pass filter, and I felt that that was the difference between this and the R5 in round 1. So it'll be really interesting to pitch these two together. Now, this is my personal camera, and the reason I have this camera is because I believe that it's the best on the market. So I'll be, not gonna lie, I'll be a bit disappointed if this beats it. And to be honest, I am a little bit worried, a bit concerned, but there's only one way to find out. So let me tell you about these lenses then. I have the Sigma 50mm f1.4 art lens, which I've always considered to be my sharpest lens. So I wanted to use that, as we did in round 1, on both cameras. But obviously I don't have a Nikon fit version of that, so I contacted Sigma and said, please can you send me a Nikon fit in this lens? So I've got the same lens on both cameras, and explained why I needed it. And they said, well, why don't we send you an even sharper lens? So turns out that the 40mm f1.4, according to Sigma, is even sharper than the 50mm f1.4. So I'll be interested to see the results. But we've got identical lenses on both cameras. They're both sent to me from Sigma because obviously they had to send me a Canon version as well. So they're both new, they're both straight out the box, and I'm going to be using them at f4 because from experience with other lenses of similar focal length and aperture, that's where the lenses are going to be performing at their best. So first up, we'll take a shot with the Canon. We're shooting in RAW, which is good. We've got the self timer on, which means we won't be touching the camera when we take the shot. We want to be at f4, so we'll change that. That's where the lens will be performing at its best, or thereabouts anyway. So all we need to do now is put the lens in manual focus, go to live view. This is how I manually focus. So you choose the area that you want to zoom in on. That's actually in the right area already because there's a nice sign there with some writing on it. I believe it's there. Now, just get it so that it looks as sharp as it possibly can to the eye, which is there. And then once I'm happy with it, I just go very subtly one way and then the other way. Just make sure it gets worse rather than better. So I'm confident that that there is as sharp as it's ever likely to be. So let's just zoom back out again, get the exposure correct. So at f4 we want to be on, so let's go with 1/100th of a second at f4. Self timer's on, take the shot, hold your breath. So that's the reigning champ all done and dusted. So now we have the contender in the shape of the Nikon D850. Now incidentally, this was released I believe in 2017. This is 2015, so this camera is 2 years older than this camera. So I suppose the Nikon has that in its advantage. So off we go now, exactly the same principles with the Nikon. So f4 already, we're shooting in RAW. We're at ISO 100, which is the same as what the Canon was, although this camera, its native ISO is 64, so I think we'll do 2 shots, one at 100 and one at 64. So the other exposure was 100, wasn't it, at f4. Let's put the live view on. And why is that so funky all of a sudden? Okay, manual focus. Now I've got focus peaking going on here, which I hate with a vengeance because it lies. So let's just go along to the same sign here and manually focus this. So you can see that the focus peaking is working there. So that's where it's maximum peakingness. So we'll have to go with that, but the text here looks to be sharp. But here's why I don't like using focus peaking. If we zoom out now, you can see that it's saying here that the tree leaves in the corner are sharp. Well, that's just not true because that tree is 3 meters away from the camera. The houses, it's saying are sharp, they're at infinity. They can't possibly both be sharp, so it's lying. Anyway, we'll get on with it regardless. So let's, self-timer's on. Let's take this shot. I don't know how many seconds delay this is, but hopefully it'll take the shot sooner or later. Anytime today. There we go.
So let's start by looking at the full images. Here's the Canon version, and here is the Nikon version. Both images are unedited, but they do have the default sharpening, which Lightroom automatically applies to all RAW files. As expected, there is no noticeable difference when seen at this magnification. So let's zoom in to 100% and split the screen so we can compare the results side by side. The first thing you might notice is the slightly bigger reproduction of the Canon due to it having 5 million more pixels. But we knew that before we started, so no surprises there. Now, I'm not sure how obvious any differences will be once this is compressed on YouTube, but looking at the RAW files on a 5K iMac screen, the Nikon does appear to have a very slight edge on sharpness. But we're talking about splitting hairs here. But nevertheless, if I had to choose the shot with the most defined detail, I would choose the Nikon version. But let's zoom into another area at 200% and see what that reveals. Again, I'm not sure how obvious this will be on YouTube, but for me viewing these on my monitor, I can make out the green text more easily on the Canon version, yet this isn't due to it being sharper, but it's almost as though the Nikon file is over sharpened and it has started to break up. Remember that both images have had exactly the same adjustments applied, which are just the default Lightroom settings. Now let's look at another area at 400%, and I really can't split these two. Sometimes I think the Nikon version is sharper, and other times I think the Canon has the edge, so I really couldn't pick a winner here. But let us know what you think. Finally, let's go back to 200% because I want to draw your attention to the number 2 on the fuel tank, which is noticeably more defined on the Canon version. But this is really one of the few areas where you can clearly pick a winner. In summary, I would say that the Nikon appears slightly sharper for higher contrast areas, and the Canon appears slightly sharper for lower contrast areas. So I'm at a loss as to where to place this crown. Now, we have a couple of options here. Firstly, we could call it a draw, but where's the fun in that? And also, we'd need to make a second one of these, and this was really expensive, so I want to avoid that if at all possible. The other option is to let you, the Photography Online viewers, decide. So what we're going to do is we're going to make both of these RAW files available for you to download, and then you can examine them as closely as you dare. And you can let us know in the comments which camera you think is the deserved wearer of the King of Detail crown. Is it the Nikon D850 or is it the Canon 5Dsr? There's a link in the description below which will allow you to download both files. Now, one thing I would say here is I think that if you did the same test with 2 Nikon D850s or 2 Canon 5Dsrs, I think you would still notice the same subtle differences that we're seeing here between these two cameras. So they really are both at the top of their game. And considering they're pensioners of the camera world, these two are still capable of blowing any other camera well out of the water, with the exception of maybe some medium format cameras. But if you differ, if you dare to differ, then by all means suggest in the comments what camera you think could be the worthy winner of the King of Detail crown, and we'll try and get hold of one and pitch it against one of these two to see which one really is the best.
Thanks to Forest Photographic for lending us the Nikon camera, and to Sigma UK who lent us the lenses to use. As Marcus said, please do keep your suggestions coming in if you think you know of a full frame camera which can take the title. We can't pitch these cameras against crop sensors or medium format, as that wouldn't be a fair comparison, but we might look at those ones in the future. Alright, well that is it for part 1 of this month's show, but do join me for part 2 in just a couple of weeks when we'll be explaining the pitfalls of shooting in aperture priority mode. We'll be camping in a remote area in the hope of getting some seascape shots, and we'll be opening the surgery to see if your holiday photos get a clean bill of health. Please do give us a thumbs up if you've enjoyed the show, and don't forget the discount link to the photography show down below. You'll also find lots of other useful links down there as well, including the one to download the RAW files to check which camera is the best for recording details, so it's well worth a snoop around. See you soon, but until then, take good care, and most of all, take good photos.